We're going to start with Andy McCarthy right now. Andy, for you, we're waiting, the rest of the group's going to come in. Your take on this, Andy. I've been watching this. As a rule, these House committees don't seem to be all that exciting. This one tended to have some pretty good moments. And I'm wondering if you agree with some others that I've heard that the Democrats are having a tough time kind of poking holes in these whistleblowers' story.
Yeah, I think they ran into a buzzsaw, Chase, and I have a little sympathy for them because these two guys are like the cream of the crop in tax investigations. And most criminal prosecutors, when I had tax cases, I leaned very heavily on my tax investigators because they knew more about the tax code and tax crimes than I did. These are the top of the top. They got this investigation because one of them is the top supervisor who ran a number of offices at the IRS, and the other one is their best investigator. And I think, for example, when Jamie Raskin started out by saying, well, don't agents and prosecutors disagree all the time? Instead of agreeing with that proposition, which is pretty standard, what Shapley ended up saying to him was, well, this isn't that case, because in this case, the prosecutors and the agents did agree. It was the Justice Department that put the kibosh on the case. So I think what you're seeing is these are very able, capable witnesses who are familiar with testifying, know more about the subject matter than the people who are asking them the questions. And I would expect as the hearing continues, rather than walk into that buzzsaw again, what you're going to hear is a lot of filibustering by the members of Congress, but not a lot of questions, at least from that side of the aisle, for these witnesses that allow them to just speak.
Yeah, and I was fascinated by that tactic. Meantime, I want to bring in Jason Chaffetz as well and Nicole Parker to kind of join the conversation now. And to you, Jason Chaffetz, it was kind of fascinating when you watch this thing because Andy makes a very good point there. Instead of actually questioning these IRS whistleblowers, they just talked about Trump. They talked about other stuff. They talked about, how can you be such hypocrites when you didn't do this during this time? Representative Stephen Lynch from Massachusetts talking only about the Trump case and then asking some tangential, not even questioning these whistleblowers. It comes across as not doing your homework. Jason, your thoughts?
Well, I would actually argue that they did do their homework and they know that the IRS agents have a case. It's pretty impenetrable. They have testified under oath previously. There's a transcript of hours worth of their testimony. And I don't think they had a case to stand on. And the only thing that's on the Democrats' mind is the next election. They have no intellectual curiosity to get to the bottom of this. I think what you'll see in part two, if you will, of this hearing, more details about what is the crime that Hunter Biden committed. Where did this income go? Did it go to the big guy? Did it go to the family? You started to see that they got into the grandchildren. Why would grandchildren get hundreds of thousands of dollars for overseas for doing what? Because there was no business, there was no service. The only business and service that there was Joe Biden in his position of power and leveraging that for the Biden's personal gain. That is the case, and these are the taxes that they should have paid, didn't pay, and but I think the overall case is what does it do to Joe Biden as the president and as the vice president?
And Nicole Parker, to you now, because there was a lot of testimony, a lot of back and forth about trying to make this into kind of butting heads between the investigators and the prosecutors, and it happens all the time. And the investigators sometimes want this charge, and the prosecutors say no. And they couldn't really make that case because they kept getting knocked down by the whistleblowers.
Right. These are rock solid whistleblowers. They're trying to deflect and put it all on former President Trump. But these are whistleblowers that, you look at their motive. What is their motive? There are now 3 whistleblowers, and their messages corroborate. Their facts corroborate. There is no upside in being a whistleblower. I can tell you, I was asked to testify before Congress in February. I was extremely nervous. It does put a target on your back. But you know what? There's something called truth. And the truth shall make you free. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution and to be fair. And when they did not see that occurring, they knew that they had to speak up and have integrity and do the right thing. I commend them. I respect them. This is not a political issue. These people aren't even on the same side of the political fence, as those in question. And they have integrity and they need to be respected. I appreciate Jim Jordan and James Comer for giving whistleblowers a place to come and speak up, because I can tell you there are several other people that want to speak up, and now they know that there is a place where they will be heard.
Andy, I want to play this soundbite. This is from Joseph Ziegler, whistleblower number 2, who, of course, was identified today. He's talking about, the U.S. attorney in Delaware. He kind of made this point. It was pretty effective. Watch it, and I'll get your take.
It appeared to me, based on what I experienced, that the U.S. attorney in Delaware in our investigation was constantly hamstrung, limited, and marginalized by DOJ officials as well as other U.S. attorneys. I still think that a special counsel is necessary for this investigation.
Andy, this is right in your kitchen, right? I mean, you know exactly what he's talking about and exactly how these things go. Did he make a fair point? Do you think that there was more that the committee could have kind of gleaned from this?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a powerful message that's sent to the entire committee, but especially to the Republican side, Trace. I think what's gone on here is they've kind of shot at the wrong target. There's been a lot of talk about Weiss. Weiss is not the culprit here. He's the fall guy. What's supposed to happen is the Attorney General picks a special counsel if the Justice Department has a conflict of interest. You don't expect a sitting U.S. attorney to ask for special counsel authority. In fact, under the special counsel regulations, special counsel is supposed to be brought in from outside the government. So you're virtually asking to be fired if you ask for special counsel designation. So what this agent is basically saying to the Republicans is it was the Justice Department that put the kibosh on this investigation. And what I hope is that they, number one, recognize that and ask Merrick Garland the hard questions. Weiss is not the guy they ought to be interested in. And secondly, let these witnesses do the talking. Don't filibuster. You got these two guys who are just great witnesses. Let them talk.
Yeah, and very quickly, Andy, while I've got you, the whole concept, the whole power struggle that's been going on between the fact that whether Weiss had the power to charge in California, to charge in D.C., or whether he didn't, is that important as we go forward?
I think it's a sideshow. The point here is if Merrick Garland had appointed a special counsel from outside the Justice Department because of the flaming conflict of interest between the Biden Justice Department trying to investigate the Bidens, then Weiss wouldn't have had a problem. No one would have had a problem. You would have had a special counsel who could have brought charges wherever he wanted.
Yeah, it is interesting. Jason Chaffetz, back to you. I'm curious because you've been in the position here of being in these types of hearings, and I'm wondering how much it comes down to the credibility of the witnesses, because you look at Mr. Ziegler and you look at Mr. Shapley, and, they appear credible. It's one of those things Andy was talking earlier about how nobody's talking about, the questioning them about the Hunter Biden thing. They're just kind of filibustering, right? It lends more credibility to the witnesses when nobody wants to ask them questions.
Yeah, because they have demonstrated over 20 years of experience that they know what they're talking about. They know this case inside and out, and it is classic when the Democrats are just asking and mentioning things about Trump and Roger Stone. It just shows they aren't serious and they don't have any information to go after these two witnesses. But I think what you're going to see is them detailing how the flow of money happened to end up in the Biden's pocket while he was vice president, while he was president, and it doesn't look good. That's the bigger story. This is a piece. It's important, but how the money ended up in the Biden's pockets.
Thank you all. Stand by. We're going back to the hearing. Here's James Comer.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.